Welcome to Culture is an Inside Job, the podcast on building an authentic, engaging, and inspiring culture. Hi, I'm Wendy Roop, and along with my friends and co-hosts Karen Preston and Scott McGowan, we believe that building a healthy work culture starts with leaders like you. If you're ready to get real and dig deep into your own self-awareness, determine how you want to show up in the world, and then take aligned action to transform your leadership and those around you, then this podcast is for you. Now, let's go inside. Welcome back, everyone, to Scott Say It.
Culture is an inside job.
Yes, we have Scott, Karen, and I'm Wendy. And of course, we always have to mention Taylor in the background because he helps us so much. Last time we talked about energy leadership. And just very quickly, energy leadership came from Bruce Schneider, who is the founder of IPEC, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And Karen and I both received our coaching certifications through them. And we also got our Energy Leadership Index Assessment certification. And so this body of work, Energy Leadership, comes from that, and we described it last time, but we thought that this time we would describe quickly from a high level what are those 7 levels, and then start doing some more explaining about each of those levels, starting at the bottom 2 levels. Karen, sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Making sure that we're bringing this back to in a way that is looking at how it's impacting us in culture, right, Scott? The ability for us to see how we're showing up in our self-culture, in our culture, in our family, in our community, and obviously in organizations. So let's just go through these again really quickly, and we'll take it from there. So we talked a little bit about catabolic and anabolic. Let's go a little bit deeper here. So catabolic is that breaking down of, it's an energy breaking down. Anabolic is constructing. And so if we need to go further into that, we certainly can, but let me jump right into the levels and see what you have.
Yeah, Karen, I just thought that I would jump in as you were describing, because it might be helpful, and we can of
go
course
deeper. Absolutely.
Do that again. But the anabolic, as Karen was describing, it is think of building, right, in mind, body, and spirit, and everything that we do. So when we're in anabolic energy, it's actually, I mean, even, again, this is science, even our cells in our body are growing because of being in this level of energy, anabolic. Catabolic, as Karen described, is tearing down. So just the opposite, right? It is the tearing down of mind, body, and spirit, and literally on a cellular level as well. And because like energy attracts like energy, when we are coming from an anabolic or a catabolic place, it is always also having that effect on other people. So if we think ourselves as a catabolic leader, then what are we doing to those people who are, not only to ourselves, but what are we doing to those people who are supposed to be, or supposedly, because we have the title, right, following us? And so we'll talk more about that later, but hopefully that just gives a little bit more context. Scott, does that help in hearing how we're describing anabolic and catabolic?
Well, yes, and additionally too, I think for those folks that are in charge of their people inside of an organization, we're living in an economy right now where if you're not self-aware in regards to your energy, there's a lot of organizations that are talking about how hard it is to recruit. So they're trying to recruit a workforce, and that's important, and it's hard. But what's most important is, what are you doing to recruit your existing workforce? Because people today, they have the luxury to make those choices every single day. There's 10 million jobs. They can vote with their feet. We're not in a society right now where we can demand or ask people to do. We're not in a telling mentality with a workforce. We're in an asking mentality. And when an employer has an idea of the impact of energy leadership, not only for themselves, but also for their workforce. What they can create is an attractive, electric, energetic, purposeful, and a place where people feel like they belong. And if you think your old habits and styles and mindsets going to carry you into the future, I mean, I just hate to say it out loud, but you're sadly mistaken, because organizations want you to stay that way because they're going to hire your people right out from underneath you. So,
Yeah. Oh,
Love that.
great way to kick this off. Great way to
Mhm.
kick this off. Thank
Love
you,
that.
Scott. Ties back to
Investing
culture.
in your current workforce. Wow. What a
Yes.
novel idea these days, huh? Um,
Go ahead, Karen.
so thanks, guys. This has been great. I'm feeling a little bit more grounded. Okay, so let's start with level one. Um, level one, I lose. Right, this mindset is how I feel helpless and hopeless. There's a lot of apathy, a lot of lethargy. It's like I can't get out of bed mentality. Right. Level two, more movement. Level two is that conflict, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, blaming everyone else for the circumstance that we find ourselves in. Level three, we move into more anabolic energy, moving away from a loss to a win. This is I win. I don't really give a rat's butt about anyone else around me. I'm just going to do whatever it takes for me to get my win. A lot of coping and rationalizing. Level four, the bridge to the higher levels, service, compassion, you win. Specifically, you could be some specific person, a specific situation that we find ourselves in, or even back to us. Who needs the most compassion right now? That's at level four. When we're on that level four bridge and we're able to be compassionate and curious, this is what leads us to the level five win-win. We start to see more opportunities. We start to take responsibility. This is where we thrive as leaders. Level six, the subtle nuance, is we always win. This is where we see every experience as an opportunity to learn and grow. It's in essence a gift. Level seven, winning and losing are an illusion. We tap into our greatest genius and brilliance in this space. We don't reside here because we would be too aloof. We need to be able to be grounded enough. So why wouldn't we want to reside in that level six space? Being able to tap into the brilliance of the level seven, but residing in level six, we get to see every experience truly as an opportunity to learn something and grow and see. It could be traumatic, it could be challenging, it could be just the most horrific experience, but I still have the ability as a conscious choice to look at that and think, this is a gift. This is an opportunity for me to learn and grow something from this experience. Did I hit them all?
Did you say seven?
Seven is winning and losing are an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
We tap into that great brilliance. Don't reside there. But the more we're able to tap into that, that's that sweet spot of flow. That's how we feel like we are just being, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that space. You had asked me last session, Scott, last episode to identify a statement around level seven. And that really is I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough. I am. There's no judgment. There's no descriptor. It's just I am.
And I think the feeling, and again, we won't stay on seven, but just description, and you use this word flow, like the feeling is flow, right? Because I am, it's just we're in flow. When we're in flow with where we're meant to be and doing what we're meant to do, and we are who we are, like it's just flow. It truly is that absolute passion. And I mentioned this last time, and I'll just say it again because people hear that and they think, oh, you're floating on a cloud somewhere, which is not true, right? It is brain science. So when we are coming from these higher levels of energy, we are using our whole brain in order to connect with all of the levels of energy. And that's really important. I think a really important distinction to make.
I want to expand upon that whole brain. Oh,
It's
sorry,
just
Scott.
not it's just not like when I'm riding a unicorn around the office.
No, definitely not that. Or when you're wearing your in Mr. Incredible's outfit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
go
Love
ahead,
it.
Karen.
I want to, you talked about whole brain a couple of times, and I want to expand on this just a little bit. We have a left and a right, and our left brain is very much process oriented. Our right brain is much more creative. And this is exactly that space of being creative, participatory, and observing all at the same time. In that space of utilizing our brain, we're able to observe ourselves in a way that we see, oh, this is me in whatever level. And in that space of observance, we get to choose what we want to create. That's that utilizing the right brain. We're processing the fact that we're in this moment, and this is going to go way deep. So I'm going to pull back, but observing ourselves in that moment, and now knowing we get to create whatever that looks like that's best for us, as well as the rest of us around the environment, the ecosystem that we all reside in at that same given moment as well.
What's the best like level 7 experience one of you have like experienced? And what is that like for our listeners? Like, what would that feel like? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, it's really when I had, when art was such a huge part of my life, and I said that the colored pencils knew what to do.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I just picked the color.
Oh, that is so beautiful, Karen. I know you've told me that story, but I love hearing it. That's
It,
flow, for sure.
that is cool.
Mm-hmm. Um, the best way for me to describe it is, my faith, my connection for me as God, is so important to me. And when I, whether it's in church or whether I'm in nature, I feel like, those two places, and I love music. So when I'm in church and I hear the music or I'm in nature, I just feel like I am definitely in that absolute passion. There is a connection that it's almost indescribable, right? Kind of like what you say, Karen, about your art. Like it's hard to describe besides just what you said. And for me, it's a very deep connection that I just know everything is going to be okay and no judgment. And yeah, that's how I would describe it. Scott,
That's
can
cool.
you connect with any time that you feel like you might connect into that level 7 since we're on the subject?
Actually, I think for me, and like you too, Wendy, I mean, I think my faith's really important to me, and it wasn't growing up. I had no idea. I thought God was a cop. It gave me a speeding ticket every day. But today, I mean, honestly, like when I wake up and it's the first thing I think about, and it's just the gratitude that like I'm breathing and things are going to be okay. And like I know something's going to happen. I know something's going to happen. But fortunately today, I have the tools and the resources to be able to handle that. Some days it doesn't happen. Some
Yeah.
days it does.
Mhm.
And probably just the willingness to just be open. I had someone ask me to say this prayer every day for a long time. And I did, but I had no idea what it meant. And the prayer was, God, remove everything I know about myself, this world, and you, and open my heart to a new experience today about myself, this world, and you.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, right? But he said, just keep praying it. And I was amazed because what happened is arrogance leaked out, went away, right? The vulnerability came in, the humility came in, and
Mhm.
new experiences and new opportunities, whether I participated in them or not. I got to see like, oh, I used to be that way. I don't want to be that way.
Yeah.
Or that was really encouraging. And there was just nuggets of opportunity to watch and see beautiful things happen, really crappy things happen.
Mhm.
So that was a long answer to a short question.
Again, back to self-awareness, right? And I love what you said about gratitude.
Yeah.
Just it's a huge piece of it. Karen?
You emptied your cup, right? You came as the learner rather than the knower.
Mhm.
You gave yourself, as Wendy loves to say, the space and grace to be compassionate and curious in order to create the experience that could set you up for reaching that full potential within yourself.
Yeah. Love it.
So, do you want to talk about level 2 today?
I say we do it.
Well,
Okay.
I think just a lot of people experience that all the time. And
Yeah.
then how do you, you guys are the experts, but how do you coach somebody into
Mm.
turning somebody in level two to a different level?
But before we do that, can I just reach back to level 1 again,
Yeah. Mhm.
real quick? Because and I mentioned this off air, but I think because, many of the people we're talking to all different kinds of people, hopefully, who are listening to our podcast. Um, but right now, I think I'm just thinking about leaders, and especially um, higher level leaders, who get things done, right? And so when I have shared the 7 levels of energy with leaders, especially when we talk about these bottom 2, right? I'm just going to say, for those who have never been a part of this work, it is it is really hard to see us in that space because we get things done. People count on us. I'm successful. I make X dollars, all these different things that how we define success. But the question is, the how behind it. How are you getting it done? And so, and even at the victim level, and Karen, if you have anything else to add to this piece, but it's important for us to know that, we are human beings. So we are made of energy. And at all times, we have all of this energy, all these different 7 levels of energy, showing up for us in different, even throughout one day. And so sometimes it's hard for us to connect with these lower levels, especially probably level 1. But remember, we may be showing up in one particular area, showing up with a lot of level 5 or 6 energy. But if there's one thing, especially under stress, right, that's been going wrong or goes wrong in our eyes or what have you, we can have that victim mentality. So it's really takes a lot to step back and really be real about how is this showing up in our life. So I feel like our challenge for you, and we would just invite you into sitting in that as we're describing these different levels. It's easy for us to say, I don't do that. But really, like, take the time to say, how does this really show up for you? Because the more real you are, right, the more opportunity you have to make shifts in your life. So I just wanted to say that. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. No, no apologies. That was amazing. The What I heard you say is, again, we go back to acceptance, right? The more we can accept that this is how we feel, this is what we're thinking, we can take an action, we can react, right? We can take an action based on those thoughts and feelings, or we can make a conscious choice to think, well, what might be a better way to serve me, even if it's just to sit in it and reflect and observe, right? And understand why we're here. It will
Mhm.
make sense when we reflect and think, why am I here? Why am I feeling so helpless? Why am
Right.
I feeling so angry? Right?
Yeah.
So level 1, in that space of feeling very apathetic and lethargic, right? Feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. One of the things as a coach, when we see that, it's really to acknowledge and validate, because again, that's the number one thing, is that you want to feel heard, you want to feel seen, you want to know that you are worthy, because right there you're questioning your self-worth, right? Feeling helpless and hopeless. But you don't have to go to level 2 to start to get yourself out of that little hole or big hole. You don't have to get angry, you don't have to blame anyone else, you don't have to be frustrated. You can go right into being able to say, what are my options? So in going to level 2, sometimes it's important to go to level 2. Sometimes we need to be upset with the situation enough to get to that overcoming feeling like the weight of the world is on our shoulders, right?
Yeah. Karen, I hate to keep doing this, going back to level 1, but one thing I think would be really important is also making sure that we're sharing the advantages and challenges of each
Sure.
one. So
Yeah.
maybe just quickly, just
Yeah.
pause for a second with and let me just share this. So the advantages, people would be like, "Well, why would you ever want to be in level 1, right? The I lose." And the advantages of that can be is that, we can really protect ourselves from harm,
Mhm.
right? Because we're in that apathy and that lethargy, and we can receive attention when we're in this mode. And I mean, let's be real, sometimes we need attention. And so that can be an advantage of it. And we don't have to take any responsibility because we're not doing anything, right? We're just kind of covering our face and covering our head with covers is the way I envision it, you know.
Mhm.
And some of the challenges, as I say, there's that little or no engagement in anything, and we lack the ability to lead ourself or others when we're in this mode. So I just wanted to jump in
Yeah.
to just share that before we jump into 2. So thank you.
Yeah, perfect. It's really important to see it from all different facets, right? So that we can relate and that help our audience relate because it's not like they've never been there, right, Scott? Like we all know level 1. So level 2 is really very different than level 1. While it's just as much destruction and damage to our cellular level as Wendy described, that catabolic energy, it's it's a very different space than being stuck in laying in bed all day feeling helpless. Or even in a situation where it's not like you're laying in bed, but you just see the situation at work and you're like, I don't have a solution. Right.
Right.
I just, there's nothing, I can't do anything. I'm giving up on this. Right.
Choice. Hmm.
Right. Level 2 is this very high level of energy inside. And we don't have to be angry at anyone else to feel it. We can be angry at ourselves. We can be frustrated with us, with me. I am frustrated at myself. I don't have to be frustrated with the rest of the world. I can blame myself for any. This is just as detrimental of a mindset than projecting out to the rest of the world how we feel, right? And we do this often. We don't even realize it. So self awareness is missing within us when, especially as you mentioned, Wendy, when we're under stress, when we're
Right.
in a situation that is challenging. These are the default levels that we find ourselves in, and it's really hard for us to see it and
Mm.
know what to do about it once we've realized that we're there.
Right.
So level 2, lots of conflict, lots of frustration, lots of blame. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this?
The other word I wanted to say is, the defiance, like that core
Yeah.
action being defiance. Like
Yeah.
that's another really good way to describe it. But some of the advantages that, and I know, most of us, especially at this point in our lives, have probably worked for a level 2 leader or maybe even had a little level 2 parent or something like that. But when we're in this level, we can get a lot done by ourselves, right? Because we are, on a mission and we're able to motivate, but we're motivating by fear and by force. So that's the difference. However, we'll get things done for a while, right? The challenges of it, is, of course, if we're thinking, I mean, not only for ourselves are we going to become dissatisfied because, again, it's breaking ourselves down in mind, body, and spirit, but those around us, again, whether it's family, whether it's work, are going to become dissatisfied after a period of time if they're working around somebody who's in this level of energy. And they can become very unproductive for multiple reasons. I can see Scott's brain turning right now. I'm thinking probably about and quit. And it goes back to what Scott was saying too about just where we're at, in the world today and how much of this level 2 is happening. We talked about level 1, but also this level 2. How many people are quitting because they're coming from this anger perspective? And Karen, I like how you described that. It's not It's not just running around screaming at people all the time, right? It could be an internal anger, or it could be showing up as frustration, externally or internally. So, yeah. Scott,
It's
what
fu-
comes up for you when you hear about this?
yeah, my wife would probably kill me if I said this, but I can't help myself, so I'll just keep talking. But you know, and Karen, you brought this up too. Is sometimes those traits protected us as kids, and we learn
Mm-hmm.
those. And
Mm-hmm.
one time, my wife and I were in an argument, and I just said, "Hey, like I'm not going to match your behavior right now. I understand that that protected you when you were younger." And she said this. She goes, "Hey, I don't need your leadership BS right now."
She
And
did
then,
that. She just
yeah,
didn't want it.
yeah. And I started laughing. She goes, "What's so funny?" I'm like, "Well, that's like the most honest thing I've heard like
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
day." And what was amazing is how that sentence just changed everything.
Yeah.
But it was the acknowledgement. So maybe I would even encourage even some listeners, like when someone's really angry, it's doubtful that anger is against you.
Right.
That's
My
That's
right.
dad used to
absolutely
say
true.
something
Mhm.
all the time. He goes, "Scott, everybody needs encouragement, and the people that deserve it the least need it the most."
Mhm.
Yep.
And it took me a long time to figure that out. But normally it's not. It's either it's a trait that they got their way, so it's just it works,
Mhm.
or it's a mechanism that really protected them, mostly when they're growing up. And if you give just people just a chance to have that cracked a little bit, some really cool stuff can happen.
Yes, and I feel like, when we think about, um, these 2 levels, um, it's the reality again, to step into what's at the core of just what you're saying, Scott. What's at the core of it? What's at the core of showing up as, in the victim mentality? What's at the core of being in the fighter mode? Um, and that's, Scott, too, you were talking earlier about showing up as a coach and showing up, as a leader, as a coach, and how do we help, people to navigate some of these things. And right, that's it. It's like when we see people and we recognize that they're in these levels, what are some of the questions that we can ask them in order to really be curious and to be with them and to be present, to help them to see that it can look different. Again, it's not about fixing, but what might that look like? So, yeah. So not always the most fun levels to talk about, but also,
Mm.
gosh, so insightful, so
Yeah.
insightful.
Yeah. I love what you were talking about here, Scott. I want to bring in the mirroring effect. Wendy, we talk about this a lot, right? The minute that you see someone in their frustration or their anger and we judge it, it's because we know it. It's because we feel it. It's because we have felt it. It's because the capacity for us to be frustration, to be angry, we see it. It triggers us. It's how we then show up. Again, meeting energy, right? One of my favorite stories is in my marriage that is now ex marriage. For a very long time, I viewed my husband at the time as being selfish. And this is my mantra. Well, you're selfish. And finally, one day I recognized what that actually meant and why this was really my ownership instead of projecting selfishness on him. It's really the truth was I wanted to spend more time with him. I wanted him to choose to spend more time with me. And the minute that I realized that this is just me and my selfishness, I stopped calling him selfish. That was huge. So the more we have that ability to be self-aware of how we're showing up, how we're projecting, how we're seeing and judging others, like what is the dynamic here? What's the potential to start to see how we have a conscious choice to show up differently and take some of that responsibility. Again, responsibility doesn't have to be shaming and guilting ourselves. It's just the ability to respond. We could flip that word around, right?
Yeah. Yes. So important. That just stepping back and paying attention to, what is it about us, right? Versus always about the other person, because it's that whole mirror effect. The other thing I wanted to bring up, Scott, you were also talking about, um, for example, as a kid, right? Some people purposely go into the fire mode because they had to survive, right? And not only as kids, but adults have to do this too. But I think that is a great example of, and it's important for us to bring this up, the reminder that these are not bad or good levels. And, for each one of us probably have a story, right? And I'm not going to share the details of my story at this point, but I certainly can share my example too of, for many years, from a personal perspective, I lived in that level 1, right? I didn't feel like I had a choice, and I was a victim of my circumstances and so forth. And then I could say, thank God I moved to level 2 and had more of that level 2 energy, that I was able to get myself into a different place to realize then I had choices. And so I just share that because, again, it's easy for us to make these good or bad, or why would we want to be in them, but there are advantages and challenges of each one of them. And sometimes it is important for us to know that and do that.
Well, I even think in this economy today, and I think COVID actually has done some amazing things. If we choose to be open and curious about people.
Mhm.
And for example, and both of you and Karen, thanks for being vulnerable, and Wendy, I think from an employer standpoint, there was a mindset that you keep your home life at home and your professional life comes in the building. And we're going to build this artificial wall, right? And we were going to be a professional organization. And what a sad existence, because today, at least what I've seen, those companies that have embraced it, is employees, they pull in the parking lot and they walk in your door, and they've got maybe a child that just flunked the 6th grade. They've got a mom that's in hospice. They've got a marriage that's falling apart. They've got bankruptcy. They've got all of this stuff with them. And for a lot of employers, they really believe that they need to leave that stuff at home. And it's just like, no, like that stuff comes in the building. It doesn't go away. And when you can accept that as an employer, like it's okay. Like
Mhm.
it's okay that you're broken. It's okay you're struggling. What a wonderful opportunity to show other people how much you care. And I think as most organizations culturally, what we learned inside of COVID is when you care about people before something catastrophic like COVID-19, when you care about people before drama, they will care for you inside of it, through it, and on the backside. But if you didn't care about them before, and now you want to care because your business is falling apart, like good luck. Like
Scott, I
you
love
better,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love how you bring this culture piece in, right? Because that is what this, obviously, that's what this is all about, but you do that beautifully. And that's, we want to help keep this top of mind for everyone. Everything that we're talking about, how does it affect culture, whether it's from internally, again, organization or family? And that, yeah, was a beautiful example. And oh my gosh, yeah, we could have a whole episode or two talking about just what we've been through in the last couple of years, and people resonating at that level 1 and 2, and who chose to then say, no, there's an opportunity in this, right? Karen, where do you think we should go next with this? I want to make sure we're honoring everyone's time. And
Yeah. Did we went through the advantages and disadvantages of level 2?
yes.
Okay, great. I don't know where I was. Probably still in level 1. No, actually probably level 3, just coping and rationalizing. Um, so I think that we've touched on level 1, we've touched on level 2. I love that we've talked a little bit about culture. Why don't we stay here for a minute or so?
Mhm.
What I liked about this idea here in terms of where we are from a COVID-19 perspective as we date ourselves is organizations have a choice. And so much of this from, historically, post, what would it be? Industrial revolution era to now. When organizations were created, there's a lot of the command and control, old school mentality, right? We're not disparaging those that are still stuck in that day and age, but they still are. And in that mindset, from top to bottom, they're focused on one thing, and that's the outcome, focused on the number, focused on pushing everybody to get to that number. And this is where we're starting to see that that model is not sustainable, right? Because people are acknowledging the fact that, hey, I'm tired of feeling helpless and hopeless. I'm tired of feeling undervalued. I'm tired of being, feeling, they started to feel helpless and hopeless. They're starting to now get into that level 2 frustration and resentment. And the choice is to resign, to find a different role, to go and push back, to whatever they have to do now, that they're honoring themselves more than they're honoring the loyalty that they once had to this organization that doesn't demonstrate loyalty to them the same way. And they can't for a number of reasons, and we can get into that. But our times changed. We are now in the crossroads of how do we move forward? How do organizations move forward? How do they build back the culture that is sustainable based on the here and now, this experience that we're in? Mm-hmm. There's no better way than to look at what that outcome is, detach from it, drop it all together, and focus on your, like you said before, the current workforce. Who do you have? What's their potential? What are the resources that they need? What level of energy are they showing up in? What would serve them better? How do we help them shift? What's in their way? The more we can invest in our people, in the human aspect of these organizations, we can help them reach their full potential. And again, I have to say this with, the caveat of full potential does not mean firing on all cylinders. Full potential could mean I can't get out of bed today, and I need to be okay with that. Mm-hmm. Full potential could be I'm really pissed off at you, Scott, and we need to sit down and have it out. But that's constructive because I'm willing to come, you're willing to hear, you're going to share, and I'm going to listen. And we're going to get through this together because we care. Mm-hmm. But if I'm an avoider and I'm just going to sit back and act like it's nothing, or I'm going to stay in that victim mentality, I make no progress. I stay frustrated and then I leave.
Yeah.
Right. Or you pressure me with aggressiveness or microaggressions and you don't realize. And that creates even more disconnect, not you specifically, but we see this everywhere. So instead of being able to come and get into, as Brene Brown calls, the rumble, so that we have the dialogue, so that we have the conversation well enough, so that I can meet you where you are, so that I can share with you where I am, so that you can meet me, so that we can reach full potential together collectively to create the culture that is more sustainable and derive the outcome that we so choose and hope to get to. That was once our goal, right?
Mm-hmm. I even love, there's a company, and unfortunately, well, maybe unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but Zappos. You guys remember Zappos?
Yeah, shoes.
Yeah, and they sold. And then one of the things that I heard is somebody called to order a pizza to Zappos. So the employee there had like full permission and authority. And so that employee ordered a pizza for this person. Yeah. And then she was caught off guard. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I called Pizza Hut." He goes, "Hey, it's okay. Like it's on its way." And then they're like, "Well, how do I pay you for it?" She goes, "Don't worry about it. We got it." And I mean, so when now you can't tell me. Now, does Zappos sell pizza? No, they don't sell pizza. They sell shoes. but that person had the authority, the permission to create an experience for somebody else. And I guarantee you they didn't have a manual of all the rules, right? He or she was just allowed to act. And in this day and age with culture is, I mean, you're allowed to stand up in front of your workforce and say, you know what? I did a really bad job with culture and I want to change. And
Mhm.
it's probably not going to be great tomorrow, but it'll be better than it is today. And I
Mhm.
need your help. And you would probably have people say a couple things. It's about time. A couple people might say, that's not true. But some people would say, I'm willing to help you with that. I'd love to talk about that. And what a beautiful thing to be able to do, to give people a sense. I think one of the things that I'm reading now about what most people want inside of an organization is a sense of belonging. Because as you
100%.
mentioned too, Karen, is the organizations that are fighting for an outcome. When you torque and adjust and tilt your culture more towards people, the outcome is higher and better than the old outcome.
Yeah, because you're helping them reach full potential. They feel
Exactly.
belonging. You're focusing
Yep.
on the moment. You're focusing on what does that connection look like? What are our processes that are not functioning well? You're looking again, we can talk about this all day long, but it's more of the present mindedness of how are we showing up right here, right now,
Mhm.
right? Golf, you can't get up to the tee and say, oh boy, I'm going to hit it long and straight. The minute that you
Well,
start thinking long and straight, you're going to shank it, right? What do you
yeah,
need to do?
I don't know how to hit it
Yeah,
straight. Taylor knows how to hit it straight. I don't know how to hit
we'll
it
bring
straight.
Taylor in on this.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
you know what to do if you want to hit it. Maybe let's talk about being in the sand pit
Yeah.
for a minute, right? And you gotta get the right club, right? You need to understand the distance to the pin. You need to understand which side of the ball you're going to stand on. It's different than standing up just hitting it off the tee, right? You need your pitching wedge, perhaps. Maybe you need something a little different. But you got to know in the moment what you need right then and there. If all you're focusing on is hitting the pin, you're never going to hit the pin. You got to think about how much more do you need to bend? What's the torque you need to give? Like all this is happening in the moment, not thinking about the pin, right?
Does putt putt count?
Putt putt does count because
Okay,
that's
good.
even more important because every one of them you're thinking hole in one, hole in one, hole,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But sometimes you got to be like, I need to bank this, and it might be a par two,
Yeah.
might be a par five.
Uh,
So,
no, this is great, and I think as we wrap up today, Karen, I think you said it. I think we invite everyone to just continue as we're talking about these different 7 levels of energy. How are you showing up? Right? What's the reality of that? Because when we again have that level of self awareness and we're really real about how we're showing up and reacting, then again, that's when we have an opportunity to help other people. And so, perhaps our next episode will continue to talk about the higher levels of energy and again, advantages and challenges of them. And then I see in our future talking about, well, what can hold us back from being able to move into those higher levels of energy? So we've got some things up our sleeves for that as well. So,
fun stuff.
Scott, anything else that you have to add or Karen?
I think the one thing too is you brought up the assessment. So if somebody wanted to do an assessment, right? So they think they're operating in level 2, but really they're a 5, or they think they're a 5, but they're really a 2. And so if somebody was interested in that, like what would they do next?
Reach out to Karen and or myself, and we'll make sure that you have our contact information and we can work with you on how that works. How do you get an assessment, and then debriefing that, because Karen and I are both very passionate about this work, and it's really important that people don't just take the assessment and then say, "Oh, okay, this is who I am." Like, it's important to talk about it, to coach around it, to debrief around it. So yeah, we'll share our information so we can help you with that if you're interested in it.
And the same thing with the book.
The book is available on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon, you can get Energy Leadership by Bruce Snyder. And it's a great book because it's in story format. So it's easy to read and, understand some of those
Does it
levels.
does it have pictures for people like me? I'm kidding.
Nah, not maybe graphs, no pictures. So yeah. So I would, yeah, check that out. And again, if you're interested in the assessment, we can share more information on that too. Karen, anything else you have to add?
Nope. I think this is exciting. I am excited for our listeners to build some self-awareness, understand what acceptance might look like, and see where conscious choice might lead them. So,
Absolutely.
Wendy, what do you do? We go inside. How does that
And
work?
let's go inside,
Yes.
right?
So
So,
let's go inside.
yep, just
How
have
are
that.
you building your
Yeah.
self-awareness?
And
Yeah.
maybe what we can do is maybe encourage our listeners as we kind of step away is just think of the people in your life that you bounce into that bring energy to you,
Mhm.
and think about uh, what traits and attributes and what emotion um, do they bring to you, and do you match those with other people?
Mm.
One of the and I know we've got to wrap up, but I can't stop talking. Henry Kissinger was actually voted as in Washington D.C. as one of the sexiest men in Washington D.C. You know why?
Why?
Because he listened.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you would have dinner with him, and you would sit down, and he would say, "Hey, your daughter's going to Boston College. How'd she do?" People would be like, "Whoa!" And he would talk about their spouse and their kids and their vacations, and what was really interesting is a lot of people said, "I don't know anything about him," right? Because he was so interested in other people.
Yeah.
And people would leave the room and say, what a really interesting person. He wasn't interesting, right? Because he didn't share anything about himself. What he did is he was just really curious about other people. And you took this big, epic personality, that was across the globe in the world. And he just kind of stepped away from that and just asked really compelling questions about humanity. And I just think that's really cool.
Yep. Curiosity is a very important part of culture too, right? It's what creates that.
So join us next time. Have a great day.
See you
See
soon.
you soon.